morning. Welcome to Riverbend. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad this band is here. My boys are here. Today is our opportunity, our moment. We get to shed off the conflict, the confusion, the questions. I'll encourage you to show yourself a little bit of love today and allow yourself to do that. Allow yourself to open up and experience your Creator, your friend, your Father. I think as a day of celebrating dads, some of you are like me, where the dad that I'm celebrating is the one that made me, the one that watches over me, the one that puts his thumb on me when I'm super hard-headed because he loves me. So just sing this first song with me, and I want you to think about your Father, your Creator, and your friend. Love you, Lord. Your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life, you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Love your voice. You have led me through the fire, darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I know you as my friend. And I have lived in your goodness, my God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. Give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, surrender now. Give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of your goodness, my God. I'm gonna sing your goodness, God. Yeah, Wes, while I was a long way off, you ran to meet me. I don't know if some of you can relate to that, but I know I certainly can. It's what gives me more than a belief that the time I'm spending telling him I love him has value to it. That the recognition has value to it. Wherever we are, I want to feel you. Wherever I am, I want to know you're close. I want to know you're close. Close to me. So quiet my mind, help me let go, help me let go of the things that distract me. My ego, my shame, my confusion, my pain, my filters, my judgment. I just want to hang out with you. I want to be next to you. I want to feel you in this room. I want to feel you in this room. 'Cause I've heard 1,000 stories of what they say you're like. It's who you are. It's who you are. I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. And I've seen many searching for answers, far and wide. That I know that we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Amen. You may be seated on your couch.
Thank you, Casey, and happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you. My name is Brad Booker. I am the morning show host of Mix 94.7, host of the Booker, Alex, and Sarah morning show. I'm also a proud dad. I want to thank my wife, Brianna, for giving me the greatest gift in the world of two amazing children. Grayson just turned 6 2 weeks ago. Our daughter, Marini, will be 5 in November, and this Father's Day is an incredible day for me. The last 6 years have truly been glorious. It's the greatest gift that I could have ever received. It also has been a little bittersweet because 3 years ago I lost my father, and so many people today are in this weird stage as they no longer have their dad with them. On top of that, we're living in a very weird and uncertain time. I have friends that are fathers that are unemployed, unsure how they're going to support their family. I have friends that are fathers that have suffered and recovered through coronavirus or have watched their families suffer. I have friends that are fathers that are dealing with how to talk about racial inequality in light of George Floyd and the protests. This is a topic that has hit our family a little harder because My mother is a 30-year veteran of the police department, and I grew up with law enforcement my entire life. I've always been a big fan of the police. Yet my wife is black and has had many negative interactions with the police, as I've discovered through difficult conversations, have many of my black friends. It's a weird time, and 2020, it seems like, is the worst year ever, but I'm going to pose a question to you that I realize is going to be difficult to wrap your head around, but what if 2020 really is the best year ever? What if this is God's way of saying to us, it's time to pause, it's time to reflect, it's time to reinvent? You know, what's been great about being home is dads are reconnecting with their families. They're reconnecting with their spouses. We're learning how to be a father all over again. We're learning how to love our family and how to be better husbands, and that is a beautiful thing. And as I sit here today, I think about what if 2020 really is the best year ever. I know we're doing great things here at Riverbend. It's really, truly incredible to see the boxes and boxes of food that we are supplying to those right here in Austin that are lonely, that are sick, that are hurting, that are hungry. This is what we do. This is the core of this church. We lift up those that are down, even when we may have fallen ourselves. And this is why I'm proud to be a member here. And this is why I say, let's stop, let's pause, let's reflect, let's re-energize, and let's ask ourselves, is this a gift that we have been given? So happy Father's Day. Thank you to all the dads for everything you have done. And I ask you, will you pray with me, please? Father, I just want to thank the men here at Riverbend who truly have been so generous in their time and their love and their caring and their support and helping those around us, helping all of those around us become better people, and as fathers, becoming better versions of ourselves during this very unusual time. I also thank you, Father, for guiding us. If truly this is your vision, if truly this is what you have set out for 2020, for us to just pause and reflect and reinvent and look at things in a different way and have those difficult conversations, we ask that you provide us with that courage to continue to do so. And I also ask, Father, as we receive these generous gifts here at Riverbend, that you bless them as you always do and allow us to use them for your work. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well, hello. It's Father's Day. We wanted to do a song for you, and just like Brad had just said, there's something awesome about being able to be home right now as a dad. And as the band was talking about this week, it made me reflect on this song that I'd written for my son Theodore, who I wrote this when he was 2. He's now 6, and I now have 2 more children. But it's just the song's called "Take My Time," and it's just a reflection of. It really was a lullaby to him to remind myself as a father to step back and just take some more time with my children. So hope you enjoy it.
And people all say you should sleep in your room, that I'd get more sleep if it wasn't for you. But when you're asleep, laying in your bed, and I miss your warmth and the smell of your head, and I should take my time and look you in the eye, and hold you when you cry,
I've made you as comfortable as I can. But you never asked me for all these things. You just want the comfort my presence brings. And I should take my time and look you in the eye and hold you when you cry. Sing a my little child, how you've grown so fast. I'm thinking of ways to make these moments last. In all of my pondering, in all of my plans, I'm missing the moment to hold your. Yeah, I'm missing the moment to hold your hand. And I should take my time and look you in the eye and hold you when you cry. And sing a You know that I love you, you know that I do. You know that I know that you love me too. So lay right beside me and drift to sleep. This moment is one I'll forever keep.
It's your move. If we were playing chess, that would mean it's your time to decide. That would mean you have anywhere from 1 to about 218 options of moves that you can make on a chessboard. Now, the average person will consider a handful. A grandmaster might consider 30 to 35 different options. And on average, there are technically about 40 to 45 different options for every move. But the complexity of chess is what makes it so elegant. When it's your move, you have a number of choices, strategic decisions. Chess has its roots back in the 7th century. Historians believe that it was a game that was played in parts of India called Chaturanga. It is also a game, a version of which was played by the Persians. The Persian people in the Near East played a game they called Shatranja. And Shatranja and Chaturanga were very similar board games, but it was Shatranja that had the number of pieces, one which was represented by the king, the Shah. In fact, in Persian, the word Shaimite means the king is helpless. It has been transliterated 1,000 years later into the language of chess. It's what we say when the king is conquered. Checkmate. It was in 1475 that the rules that we know of for chess were codified by the Italians and the Spanish. They had been debating over the rules of chess, and that's when the board, an 8x8 board with 64 squares and 32 players, was finally decided on. It is 16 players on each side, 8 pawns, 2 rooks, 2 knights, 2 bishops, a king, and a queen that was settled on long before 1475. But it was in 1475 that it was agreed upon that the most powerful piece in a chess game would be the queen. The queen was given the most power of any player on the board. And for centuries, that form of chess was called mad queen chess. I think the elegant thing about chess is the variety of options and almost the infinite number of plays that people can make during a chess game. There was a mathematician named Claude Shannon, who a number of years ago wanted to see exactly how many possible moves there could be if you considered all of the cause and effect moves, sort of the butterfly effect in a chess game. And his calculation was that the number of moves that were possible from this simple game was 10 to the 120th power. That's 10 with 120 zeros after it. In fact, another mathematician made a calculation that suggested that after each player moves 5 times, they have eliminated from possibility 69,352,859,712,417 possible ways the game can be played when each player moves 5 times. This is the complexity and the elegance, the wonder of the game of chess. Now, there are many people who suggest that chess is kind of like life, that the complexity and the choices that we face in a chess match are very similar to the way that we have to navigate through life. And I would beg to respectfully disagree, because life is way more complicated than chess. The problem is the pieces on the board refuse to cooperate. They don't go where you put them. They don't do what you tell them to do. The pieces in life are real people who make mistakes and who go rogue and who disobey the rules and who make a mess out of everyone's life and their own life. It's like the chess match is the easiest thing that you could manage. Life is way more complicated because there's sharks with lasers and sharknadoes and flying monkeys and dogs and cats living together. It's mass hysteria. And if anyone is aware of the complexity and sort of the almost infinite problems that life points us to, it's those of us living today in 2020, this year. Who of us saw this coming? Who of us was ready for the way that our lives have so dramatically changed? So what's our next move? What do we do now? What do we do now in light of all of the uncertainty and the almost infinite unknown that lies ahead of us? Last week, we began to consider, okay, what's next? What's our next move? How do we navigate in this new and changing and uncertain world with all of the struggles and all of the uncertainties? How do we survive? What do we do? And I suggested that there are 4 things that if we simplify our life and break it down into what I call 4 steps, that the first step is to stand up. When you get knocked to your knees, get up off your knees and take a stand. Be honest about what you believe. Draw a line in the dirt and say, from here and no further. Understand what you're made of and what you truly believe in and take a stand. The second step is to step out, to make a move, to put one foot in front of the other and move forward with your life. And I believe that comes by simply doing the next right thing. One step at a time, one foot in front of the other, just doing the next right thing. The third thing that we're going to talk about next week is, okay, well, what happens when I trip and fall? Because we will all fall and we will all fail. And this is where grace comes into play and reminds us that you can get back up and you can get on your feet and you can move again as long as you don't quit, as long as you don't give up, as long as you continue to press on. That when life knocks you down and kicks the stuffing out of you, don't give up, don't quit. And the final step in this 4-step process of navigating an uncertain world is to celebrate. To give thanks, to rejoice, to find the positive, to take every opportunity you can to celebrate and rejoice and be thankful, to find those things that really are life-giving instead of life-taking and hold on to those things. And so today I want us to focus on this second step. What does it mean to do the next right thing? To press on, to press into, to move, to put one foot in front of the other, to step out. What does it really mean to simply do the next right thing? It's my prayer today. It is my prayer today that we would find the courage to do that, because that's what it takes. I think it's appropriate on this Father's Day that dads, and not uniquely dads and moms and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and neighbors and friends, that we all evaluate the reality of the significance of doing the right thing, doing the next right thing, and the difference that can make in our life and the lives of the people around us, but that we don't underestimate the courage it takes. Because it takes courage to take a stand and then to step out and to do the next right thing. Especially when the odds are against us, especially when the world seems so chaotic and so uncertain, and the rules of the game seem to be changing every other day. What does it mean to do the next right thing? How do we decide that? I'd like to suggest that you begin with the basics. And if you're having a problem deciding what the basics are, let me recommend some light reading. This is Emily Post's Book of Etiquette, the 18th edition, Manners for a Modern New World. Now, I realize you're not going to thumb through this every time you make a decision, but familiarizing yourself with what is good behavior, what is right behavior. Emily Post, at the beginning of the 20th century, began writing a column to help modern American men and women know what good manners were, what etiquette was, what the next right thing might be. Here's some advice that Emily Post gives to us. She says, never take more than your share, whether of the road in driving your car, of chairs on a boat, or seats on a train, or food at the table. Do the next right thing. Don't take more than your share. Here's another one. the only occasion when the traditions of courtesy permit a hostess to help herself before a woman guest is when she has reason to believe the food is poisoned. Manners are a sensitive awareness of the feelings of others. If you have that awareness, you have good manners, no matter what fork you use. Emily Post also said, keep your hands to yourself might also be put at the head of the first chapter of every book on etiquette. And she kind of sums up good manners with this: to make a pleasant and friendly impression is not only good manners, but equally good business. You see, it's this idea that the little things matter, that the details matter, the incidental decisions about doing the right thing, saying the right thing, doing the right next thing, actually make doing the bigger thing, the harder thing, easier. It's like that old Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Last week, we began looking at one of my favorite stories from the Bible. It is a story that takes place 3,300 years ago. It takes place in a time that the Bible calls the period of the Judges. It was after the conquest of the land of Canaan and Palestine, after Joshua had led the Israelites into the Promised Land, and before the rise of the kings of David and Saul and David and Solomon. During this period of the Judges, about 350-year period, it was characterized by a nation that had no king, that was absent of certain leadership. And it said that every man did what was right in their own eyes. If that sounds familiar, what was happening 3,300 years ago in Israel sounds very similar to what is happening today. And it was during this period, this time of the Judges, that there is a story about a young woman, and she's not even a Jewish woman. She was a foreigner. She was a Moabite, and she was a widow. She had married a young Jewish man who had died, and she was now left alone with her mother-in-law, whose husband had died. And these two women have a story of returning to the land of Israel. And it begins with Ruth making a stand. She says to her mother-in-law, Naomi, she says, don't beg me to leave you. Don't try and convince me to give up. But today I stand, and your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. It is that first step in the process where Ruth says, here is the line in the dirt, and from this point, I will move forward. It's where she steps out and moves on her faith that we find her and Naomi making their way back to Naomi's hometown of Bethlehem. Bethlehem was a small village of probably less than 100 people, maybe a little more, just on the outskirts of the city of Jerusalem. And Naomi had been gone for perhaps 15, 20, 25 years. Suddenly she returns in the village, and people begin to notice this woman, and some of them recognize her. They say, aren't you Naomi? Didn't you leave 15, 20 years ago with your husband and two sons? And Naomi says, that's right, but don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. Because Mara is the Hebrew word for bitter. And she says, I'm not Naomi anymore. I am Mara. I left this place full with a husband and two sons. And now I have returned empty and bitter. That had to make Ruth feel really great, didn't it? But before you go getting all judgy about Naomi, you have to realize how difficult her journey has been. How challenging her life has been for perhaps 2 decades. She left the village of Bethlehem, her ancestral home, and the irony of it is that she left in a famine. The word Bethlehem means city of bread, and they left because there was none. And they traveled across the Trans-Jordan River Valley into the land of foreigners, into the land of Moab, the dirt people, the people that worshiped Shemash, the fish god. And they cobbled out a living there until Naomi's husband died. Her two sons then married foreign women, married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. But after 10 years of surviving in Moab, her two sons died. Her one daughter-in-law abandoned her, but Ruth was the one who returned with her. You see, the book is not called the Book of Naomi. It's called the Book of Ruth, because Ruth was the one who took a stand, and Ruth was the one who stepped out and did the next right thing. When they arrived in Bethlehem, Ruth asked her mother-in-law, Naomi, would it be okay, can I have your permission to go out into the fields and glean in the harvest? Gleaning was the social welfare program of the Hebrews, of much of the Middle East. It was social security, it was welfare, it was a program. In fact, it was a law among the Jewish people. Moses had written it into the Torah. It was in the third book of the Torah, in the book of Leviticus, in Leviticus chapter 19. The people of God were commanded, when they were gleaning a field, to not be obsessive about going back and picking up the stalks or the heads of grain or the grains that fell on the ground, but they were to leave those in the field for the poor and the foreigners. In fact, they were to even leave the corners of their field uncut. So this could be a social support network for those who were poor and those who were foreigners in the land of Israel. And Ruth was, in fact, a poor foreigner. Ruth asked her mother-in-law if she could go out into the field to glean in the harvest, and Naomi sent her out. And Ruth went to the field, and she wound up in the field of a man named Boaz. And Boaz just happened to show up that day, and he asked his foreman, who is this woman that looks out of place? Because most of the people who were gleaning in the fields at that time were the families of the harvesters. It was a way they gave themselves a bonus at harvest time. They were the ones who gleaned in the field, following their husbands as they were cutting the grain. So Ruth would have been an unfamiliar face, and Boaz asked his foreman, his overseer, who was this? And he said, well, she is a woman who is the daughter-in-law of Naomi. Naomi, whose husband Elimelech had died, and whose son, who was married to Ruth, has also died. And Ruth is here caring for her mother-in-law. Boaz says, make sure that she is taken care of. And so Ruth harvests and gleans throughout the day until late in the night, perhaps even after dark. After 16 or 18 hours in the fields, she threshed the grain and brought a basketful, an ephah full, back to Naomi. Naomi was overjoyed, and she said, in whose field did you glean today? And she said, I gleaned in the field of Boaz. And when Naomi heard that, she said, well, you have to go back there tomorrow. And throughout the harvest, Ruth went back to the fields, and it provided the sustenance for those women to stay alive. And they lived together in Bethlehem. She did the next right thing. Now, this may seem easy, but the problem is we have plans. We have ideas about what we want our life to be. I don't know if you're a planner, but I'm a planner. I plan, some of my favorite things to plan are projects around my home and vacations. I love planning vacations. I'm obsessive about planning vacations. And I know those of you who know me, you're saying, but Dave, you're such a happy-go-lucky guy. You're so spur of the moment and so spontaneous. I can't believe that you get caught up in your plans. Oh, I get caught up in my plans. This is a folder that I started putting together a year and a half ago for my vacation in Colorado 2020. See, about a year and a half ago, I had this idea that in the summer of 2020, my wife and I would take our Jeep. We have a Jeep, and I thought it'd be so cool to go four-wheeling up in Colorado, you know? And I bought 6 books on Colorado Jeep trails. And I was researching how we could drive around and go camping and off-roading all through Colorado in our Jeep. I thought that'd be so cool. But over the months, my wife, she was going to go. She was good. She could handle it. Diane said, well, we can do that. But I could tell from her lack of enthusiasm that this really wasn't what she had planned for our vacation. This wasn't something she was looking forward to. And she made it plain to me that driving a Jeep on a four-wheel trail is different than riding in a Jeep on a four-wheel trail. When you're driving, you kind of are into it. When you're riding, you realize how close to death you are all the time, and you have no control. And then she said, you realize we have to ride in that loud and obnoxious Jeep all the way from Austin, all the way to Colorado. It's not a pleasant trip. I'm not bragging, but I picked up on her signals and said, okay, well, we're not going to do the Jeep trip. This was about a year ago. I decided, okay, well, we won't do the four-wheel drive trip, but we'll go to Colorado in the summer of 2020, and we'll see a bunch of our friends. Our best friends from Dallas rent a house every summer up in Ouray, Colorado. And he's been asking me to come up there. He says, on the 4th of July, the people of Ouray lose their mind. It's the best 4th of July anywhere in the nation. And we have a house right downtown in Ouray, and you can come and stay with us. So we were going to go up there for the 4th of July. And then we were going to go over to Aspen. I've never been to Aspen, and I met a guy and his wife who I really liked last year who lives in Aspen, and I was hoping to connect with them. And then we have a dear friend from Austin who has a house in Beaver Creek, and we would have loved to have spent some time with her. And then there's a young family, a young couple. I did their wedding 3 years ago, and they just had their first child, and I haven't seen them in 3 years, and they live in Denver, and I was hoping to connect with them in Denver. But the best part of the trip for my wife was at the end of the trip, we were going to go see a concert at Red Rocks in Colorado Springs, and we're going to see one of our favorite bands, the Avett Brothers, live in concert at Red Rocks. But that wasn't the best part of the trip. The best part of the trip was when I decided not to do a four-wheel drive trip anymore. I decided I was going to save up for a year and rent a Porsche. Yeah, that's right. I was going to rent a Porsche and drive around Colorado, and you can bet I was going to get the extra insurance because I was going to drive the wheels off of that bad boy for 2 weeks. Driving around Colorado in my Porsche with my bride, seeing all of our friends. It was going to be glorious. You know when we leave for this trip? Never. We're not going. Canceled it. Canceled all the hotel reservations, canceled the car reservation, canceled the plane flight. Told my friend I wasn't coming up to see him in Ouray. Because about 6-8 weeks ago, I realized the next right thing to do was to be here this summer. Couldn't go to Colorado and drive around and see our friends. I needed to be here. See, I had these plans. It's like John Lennon said in his song called Beautiful Boy. He recorded it in 1980. It was released after his death in December of 1980. And there's a line in it where he says, life is what happens to you, or your plans are what you make before life happens to you. It's like life gets in the way of our plans, and then what do? Then you just do the next right thing. But the Book of Ruth reveals to us something that's going on that we can't see. It's something beyond our understanding that is happening. See, this is what the Bible does. The Bible is like a spiritual CAT scan of life, and it shows us things that are beyond our sight. It reveals to us the way that God is working, taking care of things, while we are simply responsible to do the right next thing. It's what I call divine coincidence. You ever experience that divine coincidence? For Ruth and Naomi, the divine coincidence began when Ruth decided to follow Naomi back to Bethlehem. And it says that they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Not in the middle of it, not at the end of it, not in the 51 weeks when the barley harvest wasn't taking place, not 6 months before it or 6 months after it, but they just so happened, just coincidentally, to arrive in Bethlehem at the time of the barley harvest. And then just coincidentally, she decides to go to a random field, and it happens to be the field of a man named Boaz. And Boaz just happened to be from the clan, from the family. He was a distant cousin of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. And it just so happened, just coincidentally, that Boaz actually showed up in the field the first day that Ruth was gleaning there. He just happened to come out to that field on that day, on her first day out in the field. He happened to notice her. Just coincidentally, Boaz happened to be a godly man, a man of great integrity and character. When I think of Boaz, I like to think of Bo Jackson. Just a good-looking, intimidating man, a man of strong physical presence, a man of high character. Maybe it's just because his name is Bo. And if I had a friend named Boaz, I'd call him Bo. But just imagine Bo Jackson showing up, and Bo says, I need you to take care of her. I need you to look out for her. And just coincidentally, he's a man who understood the law. And he said, we're going to let her glean in the fields, and we're going to give her an extra measure. And just coincidentally, as she threshed her grain, and after her first day, she had an ephah of grain. An ephah of grain is 50 or 60 pounds of threshed grain. That was more than enough for two women for quite some time. It would give them resources that they could sell some of that grain to buy fruits and vegetables, to buy other supplies and provisions. And she just coincidentally was invited back to that field throughout the harvest season. And just coincidentally, their life was completely taken care of. And when Ruth told Naomi that the land was owned by a man named Boaz, Naomi recognized that Boaz was their goel. In Hebrew law, there was a responsibility that was given to the patriarch of a family. To the most prominent member of any family or any clan was given the title the goel, the guardian redeemer, the kinsman redeemer. And that person was responsible for the welfare and the well-being of everyone in the family. And it just so happened, just coincidentally, that Boaz was Naomi's kinsman redeemer, the goel. So that while Ruth simply did the next right thing, we realize that God was doing everything else. You see, I think this is how it works. I think this is the principle that is in play. When we don't know what to do, when we're confused and we're overwhelmed, when the odds are against us, when these are uncertain times and uncertain days, just do the next right thing. Go to your bookshelf and pull off Emily Post's book on modern manners and follow her advice. Here's some good advice in case you're wondering, what is the next right thing? She says, the attributes of a great lady may still be found in the rule of the 4 S's: sincerity, simplicity, sympathy, and serenity. I have 3 daughters who need that. And you're watching right now. She also says this is valuable advice, the next right thing to do. It is impossible for a hatless woman to be chic. How about this? A lady never asks a gentleman to dance or to go to supper with her. A lady also never has any dates. How about this one? She says, if God had intended for women to wear slacks, he would have constructed them differently. Is she talking about the slacks or the women? I'm not going to even go there. Here's one for gentlemen. A gentleman should never take his hat off with a flourish. I don't know. Here's her best advice. It says, a gentleman does not boast about his junk. That doesn't mean what you think it means. Trust me. It means garbage, trash. Keep your mind focused, people. But you see, the value is in the micro decisions. I have this theory that if we pay attention to the little things, if we pay attention to just doing the next right thing, manners, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, holding the door for someone, letting someone cut in line in front of you, not responding with unkindness, but responding with grace. Just doing the right thing, the little things. My theory is, and you can take this or leave it, that the big things take care of themselves. That when we don't know what else to do, we make these micro decisions, the right decision, and they add up, they accumulate. One smart move, one right move leads to another. It's how grandmasters play chess. It's how they approach the game of chess. Chess is a very complicated game, and the way that the organization, the FIDE organization that oversees competitive chess in the world today, ranks players is what's called an ELO score. It's named for a mathematician who created an algorithm that evaluates the level of competition and the skill that players play at in competitive chess. And to be considered a grand master in chess, in international competition, you have to have an ELO score of greater than 2,500 to be a grand master. In 2003, there was a 13-year-old Norwegian boy named Magnus Carlsen, 13, who was the youngest player ever to be considered a grand master with an ELO score of 2,500. Before he turned 18 years old, he had raised his ELO score to 2,800, one of only 4 people in the world. Most chess experts believe that a score of 2,900 is impossible. Young Magnus Carlsen, by the time he turned 20 years old, was the #1 ranked player in the world. In 2013, he became the youngest world champion in competitive chess history. In 2014, his ELO score was 2,882, the highest ever recorded. And in 2014, 60 Minutes did a profile of Magnus Carlsen in which they showed him playing 10 people without looking at the boards. This is from that 60 Minutes article.
Bord 10, G3.
Just look at what he's doing.
Bord 10, løper D2.
Competing against 10 players simultaneously. That in itself is not extraordinary, but Magnus cannot see the boards. He's facing the other way.
Bord 5, C slår D4.
So he has to keep track of the positions of 320 pieces blind.
Bord 5, tårn B1.
And the number of possible moves, infinite. Magnus comes out on top.
It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Do you have any idea how extraordinary this looks to?
No, it's one of the amazing things in chess that you don't really need a board. You can just keep.
But it transcends chess. I mean, I just can't fathom what you've just done. It's just, it seems like it's supernatural.
So how does he do it? How is it possible? Is it just a parlor trick? Is he just showing off? How can he memorize the positions of every player in 10 different games, as well as the moves that he's going to make? He does what every great grand master of chess does. He plays one move at a time. He just makes the next right move. The trick is to keep all of the pieces in his head in proper order, but then he just knows all he has to do is the next right move. And follow that with the next right move and the next right move, and he will eventually prevail. We are living in a time that challenges our souls, that challenges us to make sense of the world that we live in, that might paralyze us and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move forward. In a world that is so uncertain and so infinitely complicated. Follow in the footsteps of Ruth. Stand to your feet. Be honest about what you believe. And then step out. Put one foot in front of the other. And just do the next right thing. It's your move.
told you what really happened. Not that it matters, but now you've forgotten. When I get up from this place of confusion, I wanna run straight into your Oh man, you guys have a great Sunday. I love this idea today of doing the right next thing. May you show up in your house and in your car and in your living room while you're alone with your family, whatever it is. And wherever you are this week, may he show up to meet you. And may we trust him enough to just allow ourselves the light burden of doing the right next thing. If you need to plug in during the week, we got stuff going on I think Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday around 7:30. So tune in on YouTube and Facebook for that. Otherwise, we'll hopefully see you soon. You guys stay safe. We love you. We miss you, Riverbend fam. Go with God.